All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We're going to talk about designing for the human factors of audiovisual. So we'll get into that. Agenda for today, we're going to just introduce myself and give a couple shameless plugs. We're going to talk about the human information processing model. And, a lot of this is going to be academic, and so I'm just warning you ahead that, this is, there's going to be some academics here. We're going to talk about the 7 stages of action, and as part of those 7 stages of action, we're going to talk to you about a couple of gulfs, and then we're going to talk about how to overcome those gulfs, and then we'll have some Q&A time. So, about me, I'm Mike Pedersen. I'm the Audiovisual Experience Manager at Iowa State University. I am an in-house integrator, # in-house integrator. We run our own install team on campus, and we're really proud of that. I'm in my 7th year at Iowa State. Before that, I spent almost 19 years at an audiovisual integrator called Mechden Corporation, the largest AV integrator you've never heard of. And so our team did win the Higher Ed AV Team of the Year in 2023. I am very involved in the industry. Right now, I'm an institutional board member for ETC. I'm also on the program committee in the membership committee. We hosted the ETC annual conference at Iowa State Names last fall. I'm also really involved with AVIXA. I was 2018 CTS Holder of the Year with AVIXA. I'm on the membership committee and the CTS renewal committee with them. And also been involved with HETMA, where I was a board member previously. Iowa State University, a little bit about us. We are a public land-grant university founded in 1858. Our enrollment's right around 30,000 students. We have 10 schools and colleges and 100 majors. One of our biggest claims to fame is that the world's first electronic digital computer was invented at Iowa State University in 1942. And then we're located in beautiful Ames, Iowa. It's a great little town. It often shows up, as you see, in the top 10 lists of best college towns in America, right? And so it's a great place to live and have a school. All right, just a couple of shameless plugs here. I mentioned these briefly, and if you're not familiar with them, I would encourage you to get familiar with them. ETC, Educational Technology Collaborative, was formerly CCUMC. Just amazing professional and leadership development, and as the name suggests, very great collaboration among the individuals in that organization. Just cannot encourage you enough to join that and take advantage of the collaboration. They have a really active email listserv, where questions come every day, and you'll get 10 answers within an hour, right? To whatever question it is that you might have. So this is really great and active. The other organization I would encourage you to look into, if you're not familiar with them yet, is HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. Their primary focus is advocacy for higher education within the broader pro AV market space. So they're advocating with manufacturers and making sure that they're considering the needs of higher ed as they're designing the products or looking at roadmaps for new products. A couple of things that HETMA does, they have something called a PRISM Scholarship, which is very cool. This is a scholarship program primarily targeted for underrepresented individuals, but not exclusively. But as a PRISM Scholarship winner, you get everything you need to know to get your CTS certification. So you get the CTS book, you get the CTS classes, you get a one-on-one mentor assigned to you for a year as you prep for the CTS certification, and then you get an all-expense paid trip to Infocom trade show where you get to take the CTS exam once you've studied for it for the whole year. So it's a great program to really engage people into the pro AV market space more. They also have my Pro program, where manufacturers send products to individuals in higher ed who are volunteering for that, and they evaluate the product, and if it works really well for the needs of higher education, they may give it the HETMA approved seal of approval that product is well geared and suited for higher education. All right, now let's get into the meat. Human factors. All right, so human factors is, so I'm in finishing up a Master of Engineering in Engineering Management degree, and as part of that, last fall I took a class on human factors, and I was fascinated, right? And so this is kind of an outshoot of that, and no, I'm not, it's impossible to take a whole semester's course and put it into 45 minutes. And so we're not going to do that, but we're going to hit some high points. But just generally to define human factors, it's a field dedicated to understanding human behavior and limitations, and then appropriately designing technology systems that are these four things: safe, effective, efficient, and free of errors. So there are two key principles of human factors. One is know and honor thy user. You have to understand the users. That's the very first thing you need to know. Who are they? What are their limitations? What do we need to know about them? And then the other key factor is recognition of individual differences. You have to know that people have different ways of thinking, different ways of experiencing the world, and you have to take those things into account as you're doing your designs. So this is what I refer to as the handbook. This is the day-to-day handbook that everyone should know. And if you've never read this book, you absolutely should read this book. At least you should read the first 4 chapters. And so this is the book, the Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, and a lot of the concepts that we're going to talk about today come directly from this book. One key takeaway from that book that is really interesting, if you stop and think about it, is he claims that there's no such thing as user error. If you run into user error, that just means that there was bad interface design. Okay, and so he really pushes out on that, right? So you need to make whatever you're doing, error free, right? And make it intuitive, so that people can understand what it does. I have a friend who works at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and he says, about every couple of years I pull this book off the shelf and I read the first 2 or 3 chapters, and I feel so bad about how bad we're doing that I put the book away. And then a couple of years later I get the book back out and I read the first 2 or 3 chapters, and then I feel so bad about how we're doing with regards to things that I put it away. And there's a certain amount of that that I can certainly recognize in this book, but it's a great read, and so we're going to talk about some stuff out of it here, though. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about, we're going to spend a couple minutes on the slide, and we're going to move on to some other things. But this is a model of the human information processing model. So lot of stuff going on here. And so you can kind of see what we have. You kind of have input output, right? So you have your sensory system, right? So that's your primary senses, and the neurological backpinnings to those sensory systems. So we have sensory processing. We have the short-term sensory storage, and of course it's getting information from the environment, right? So environment information feeds in here. So you sensor it, but then do you actually perceive it? So a big part of that is perception. And, so up here at the top, you have what's called attention resources. And so you have a limited amount of attention that is available to you. And this is both, conscious and unconscious attention resources that are available to you. So you can see that you need some attention to decide, is it even worthy of being perceived, right? And so there are some limitations there that your attention makes that decision. And then you need attention resources that go into the perception aspect of this. So are you actually perceiving what your senses have picked up? So once you've perceived it, however, there's a couple of different pathways. You can go from perception directly to response selection, and of course that would be a reflex. You did not hit working memory at all. You didn't think about it. It went right from perception, hey, that's hot, the hand comes away. You didn't stop and think about that when your hand came away. That went right to response selection once you perceive that heat. But for most things, you go from perception to working memory and cognition. And this is where your brain starts to work. It's taking things to and from long-term memory. You see, long-term memory also plays into perception and selection on a long-term basis. So you're kind of working through some things here in your working memory, in working through some things, and then you make a decision on response, right? And so now you go to response selection. Of course, all these things take resources, attention resources. So you decide what you're going to do, then you actually do it. And then, of course, that changes the environment because you've acted into the environment, and then that starts, the loop back. And so the whole class, the whole semester, he showed this in the first week, and we just kind of worked through this for the whole semester, and various aspects of this, and it was fascinating. We're not going to be able to get into this deeply, but I wanted to show this to you because I thought this was a very succinct and interesting way to think about, okay, how do we perceive things in the world, and how do we process that information? Of course, we have 5 basic senses: visual, auditory, olfactory, which is smell, gustatory, that's a fun word if you've never heard that word before. That's the sense of taste. Haptic is the sense of touch. Now there actually are some other senses that are not directly related to those 5 senses that do exist in the system. That includes what's called proprioception or kinesthesis. Kinesthesis, that's a hard word, but that's basically kind of body awareness. Awareness of where your limbs are and what orientation they're in. That is actually kind of its own separate sense in some ways of understanding your body posture. Vestibular, of course, is the balance, and temperature is kind of a little bit different than touch in some ways, so that's kind of a little bit different sensory system as well. So one of the first things you saw up there on the human information processing model was the short-term sensory store. Now, each sense has a certain residual temporary memory just built into the sense itself. Does not require any attention resources. It's also called a sensory registry. So it holds information that it has received for a very short time. Visual, actually, probably up to a second. You'll see something. It resides in your short-term memory or short-term sensory store, and you have about 1 second for your attention resources to grab that and do something with it before it dissipates. Okay. For auditory, it's a little bit shorter. Only about 300 milliseconds from the time it hits for your attention resources to grab that and move it forward if you want to do something with it. And then of course. The other thing you need then is we talked about long-term memory. So long-term memory is needed to encode it into something known. You perceive something, you see it, you sense it, you perceive it, but then of course, what is it, right? And that's where long-term memory really comes into play. If it's something you've never seen before or experienced before, then or felt or whatever, you have no basis to know what that is. But as life experiences go on, you get a vast understanding of things of the world, and so your long-term memory comes back and says, oh, that was this. Okay. So that was kind of the academic part. We're going to get to the more practical part here now. All right. So in the design of everyday things, Don Norman talks about the 7 stages of action. So we're going to walk through these. So the first of the 7 stages is goals. So you have a goal in mind. I want to do this. Okay, so that's the first thing that you have in mind. So, for example, I want to show this projector, or I want to show this laptop on a projector. Okay, so that's my goal. All right, so now you decide to act. Okay, so at this point I'm going to decide to turn on the AV system. And then you create a sequence of actions. So that you're deciding to act, but then you got to decide, well, how does that action occur? What steps does it take to go through that? So you got to determine what the steps are to get the laptop to show on the projector. And then you execute those actions. So you push buttons on the touch panel, make things happen. And then then we go back to the world, right? We came kind of talking about the information processing model. You're now impacting the world, okay? This is the user, that's yourself, that's the room, that's the AV system, it's the aspects of the world. And then you perceive the state of the world then. So was there an indicator on the touch panel that something happened? Did I see the projector turning on? Was there a beep that I heard? Do I now see the laptop image on the screen? So now you're back to perceiving, the perception part of the state of the world. Then you interpret that perception. So what does it mean? So I perceived an image on the screen, but what does it really mean? I see that this light, this button has turned a color on the touch panel, but do I know what that means, right? I've perceived it. Do I understand it? So what does that mean? And then you have to evaluate that, right? So is my laptop image on the screen? And we're back to the evaluation, right? And so this is kind of the 7 stages of action that you would see that as he defined it in the book. Now, again, you can see that this relates very closely to this human information processing model. It's really kind of this loop in a different terminology. Now, the problem is there's a couple of gulfs that you can run into as a part of the 7 stages of action. The first gulf is called the gulf of evaluation. And this is basically, can I sense it? Can I perceive then what the sense is? Can I interpret that perception into something useful? So can I see, hear, touch? Do I understand what that indicator means? Do I know how it relates to my goal? This all relates to situational awareness, which is a whole other topic that we covered in human factors that we're not going to get into today. But yeah, this is a key aspect of that. And then the other gulf is called the gulf of execution. Okay, so maybe you've perceived it, you understand it, you've been able to correctly evaluate it, but do I even know how to execute on it? Do I even know how to achieve my goal? What actions are even possible by the system? What can it even do? I don't know. Do I know what steps to take to make this goal occur? Are there barriers that physically prevent me from executing the action itself? Can I reach the button? Is the button actually responsive to my touch? And so now you've got all these challenges that can come in on the execution side as well. So you've got this gulf of evaluation. Can I perceive, understand what it means? And then you've got this gulf of execution where do I even understand how to do it? Or if I understand how to do it, can I even do it, right? Is it even possible to be done? So we're going to talk about now how to overcome those gulfs. And there's a wide range of possible things that we can do. So we're going to kind of walk through some of that. Okay, so with regards to the gulf of evaluation, there's a few things that you want to make sure that you do, right? And these are pretty obvious, right? Hey, Captain Obvious. Of course, we want to ensure the system provides the user information about the current state that is A, perceptible, and B, meaningful, okay? And so we're going to talk about these things in detail. We're going to talk about affordances and conceptual models, making things visible, giving feedback and mapping. But these are some of the possible methodologies that you're going to use to overcome those gulf of evaluation. And then under execution, again, you want to make sure that the system is designed such that the actions are A, clear, and B, actually able to be accomplished, that they actually are supported in capability. Okay, so this is a really fun aspect of this. So affordances. So an affordance is a perceived functional property of something. It's what it looks like, its shape, its the aspects of it give you insight into what you can do with it. For example, a chair affords sitting. Okay, you can kind of tell from the shape, you can kind of tell from its structure that, oh, okay, I think that's something I can sit on. This affords sitting. It's kind of that shape, right? I can sit down on it, and it works for that. This round wheel, well, that affords turning, right? You get the understanding that affords the ability to be turned. A glass or a container kind of affords the ability to hold something, or a handle might afford the ability to be turned. Okay, and so these are innate properties of whatever it is that give you some insight into how it could be used. So one of the classic things he talks about is a Norman door. Okay, he didn't call it a Norman door. It has now, because Don Norman, but it has now, in the industry, they refer to these things now as Norman doors because of his discussions. So you walk up to a door. Is it a push door or a pull door? Do you know? Can you tell? So you walk up to this, right? It's the same handle on both sides of the door, and it looks the same on both sides. So what is that? Do you push that door? Do you pull that door? You may not know when you walk up to it. And so this gives you no affordances at all of how that door is supposed to open, okay? Because it could be either way. And in this case, if you walked, as you got closer, there were little badges on the door that, like actually right here, that said push or pull. So, but you had to get close to see those before it would give you that information. Let's try this. How do these work? What affordances do these offer as to how to open that door? I'll be honest. I walk up to this. I have no idea what to do with that. Is there someplace I'm supposed to push on that? But I'm going to wave my hand in front of it. Does it come open? I don't know. And that's even worse. What the heck am I supposed to do with that? There's no affordances whatsoever that tell me how that door is supposed to open as I walk up to it. So yeah, these are, not showing you some insights on how these things are supposed to work. So he further then goes on and defines something called a signifier. Okay. Now a signifier helps you identify how to utilize an affordance, and so and this is where this is very subtle, right? He talks about this at length in the book, But so signifiers are very much like affordances, but they're not. But we can use signifiers then to make the functional options more clear. So here's an example. Which one of these gives you the best clue that it is something to be pushed? All right, so here we go. So of those three things, just at first glance, which one gives you the best clue that it's something that you can be pushed? The one on the far right. You kind of get that raised sense. You kind of get the sense that there's actually, a button that can be pushed there from experiential things. So the shape and aspect of this gives you an affordance, or a signifier. Got to keep my terminology correct. That is something that can be pushed. Okay? All right, let's try this. Is that an indicator or a slider that you can change? You have no idea. Now, what about that? Does that give you an indication, or is there a signifier there that gives you some insight, whether that's something that can be manipulated, right? And so these are the kind of things that these are signifiers. These kind of help you can understand, right? And of course, the push and pull signs on ambiguous doors give you, that's a signifier, right? It helps you understand how to utilize that particular item. All right. So here's the other thing. Here's another thing that you can do is making things visible. The basic things here, of course, are legibility, right? Color and contrast. How easy are either of those to read? They are not very easy to read, okay? You just do not have great contrast. When I came to Iowa State, this was very similar to the touch panel layout that we had at that time. And I was thinking, we should make this cardinal and gold, right? Iowa State colors. And so we started that process. And we didn't get very far down that process before I determined that the contrast was horrible when you start putting, gold on red or red on gold. Either way, it was really hard to read. And so we're like, nope. That's not going to work for us, right? So we kind of went back to this dark blue and white text because this gives you really good contrast and be able to read and see things. Another thing he talks about is pictorial realism. It should look like what it represents, okay? And this goes back to iconography. So you can kind of see, these are basic, conceptual icons that make you very clear understanding of what those things are based upon experiences in the world. And so, in this case, these are, that's a laptop. That's obviously a dot cam. That's obviously a Blu-ray disc. Solstice, okay, that's not quite as obvious of a pictorial signifier, but it it gives you some insights as to what those things are and how you might use them. And by the way, I am not saying that our touch panel design is perfect. We've kind of laid on this, and part of standardization is, okay, this is really good, and we're going to put this all over, but it's certainly not perfect. There's lots of opportunities for improvement. So another aspect of making things visible is called the principle of the moving part. So this is where you perceive something moving as the real part would in the environment, right? And so in this case, this is of course the classic file moving thing that you see in Windows or I don't know if Mac does this, but I'm not a Mac guy. But yeah, get the sense of where the file is moving from one folder to another. So Dr. Richard Stone was my instructor for this class that I took last fall in human factors, and one of the things he said often was, put knowledge into the world, okay? And so, that, again, that's signifiers, but that's just even as simple as, text notes, sticky note. And for him, like, hey, even sticky notes, right? You're putting knowledge into the world, at least temporarily, into that, right? And so it's one of those things that you want to do. Part of making things visible is you really want to put some knowledge into the world. All right, so the next one. Giving feedback, okay? So it turns out that users need near immediate feedback that their action was recognized, that there was some kind of state change. A lag of even 100 milliseconds will begin to lead to confusion for the user of did something actually happen, okay? And so it raises challenges. And so the other thing is, as far as feedback, to the extent possible, human beings really prefer and do better with multimodal information. That is, it's impacting more than one sense. Again, the two easiest and most obvious ones are visual and auditory at the same time, right? And so, in this case, you push the button. Do you see something happen? Does it change color? Does it do a little animation like it's being pushed in? And then do you also hear a click or a beep at the same time? That's going to give you that multimodal information that's going to really provide some help, right? And so yeah, up here, again, immediate feedback. Okay, so this is actually a story. That's why I put that picture in there. Okay, so we had a big debate with my team on this, and they finally came to what I told them they were going to do. And so the team on this projector status, they wanted to wait and change that until after the projector reported back to the control system its state. Okay, and so that would, in some cases, that would not change for 2, 3, 4 seconds after you push the on button. And I'm like, no, guys, that has to change like immediately. As soon as that button gets pushed, that needs to change. And they fought me on it. No, because it tells us what the status of the projector is. And if we don't wait for the feedback from the projector, then we don't really know what the status is. And I'm like, no. No, that's going to change immediately. And this goes back to this giving feedback, right? That has to be immediate feedback that you know something has happened. All right, so again, this kind of goes back to, so now we're overcoming this gulf of evaluation, kind of bringing us back to this conceptual thing that we're talking about, right? So again, it's kind of we're through this again. When you press a button, do you get an immediate color text change? Do you get an audible beep, tone, or click? In some cases, like on our phones, right? You can get that tactile click or a vibration back also that can tell you that something has happened. Now, ideally, again, multimodally, you really should have at least any two of these at any time to really give the best feedback back to your users. All right, so another methodology that you can use is called mapping. And mapping is just like it sounds, right? You're trying to spatially represent something in this relationship to how it really exists in the world. Now, keys to maps include, so we're gonna map controls to indicators or displays, and we're also gonna map controls to functions. The instructor was telling us a story, right? So, in a lot of early power plant designs. And you would think that they would have known better than this at the time, but he said in often cases they had like indicators or dials or giving you feedback gauges on things, but the control that would change what was happening to change that indicator was over here, right? And maybe there's different control right here that was to change something else, right? So the controls were not physically or they were not physically associated to the gauges that they were referencing, okay? And so that of course has changed where the control for whatever this gauge is indicating is like physically right there it's immediately mapped to those things. The other thing is mapping controls to functions, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. For AV, the type of mapping most used is what we would call natural mapping. It's either spatial, matching controls to controlled objects from a locational perspective. And it's also what we call a functional mapping, right? Up, you think more of something. Down, you think less of something, right? This is more of a functional map, up, down, left, right. It gives you some aspect of knowing that, that's going to be more or less. All right, so here's a couple of examples, right? So here is an early version of one of our active learning classroom control panels, and you can kind of see, all right, so we're going to what we call breakout mode. And again, even having had a human factors class, I'm not saying that this is at all well, but I'm just using this for an example. So we have these 9 breakout stations, right? But in the room, what breakout station is numbered what? We don't know, right? It's okay. So this is better, right? This may be a next iteration of what we're up to, right? So this actually, if you were standing, if you were the instructor, you were standing here. Team 1 was actually right here behind me. Team 2 was here, right? So these really were kind of, at least conceptually, in the directionally and in the order that those tables actually existed in the room, okay? But now this is even better. Okay, so this is going to be going into a new building we're putting in. This particular room has 4 projectors on it. But so here you go. Here's like literally a CAD drawing of the room in all its details, And then these are shown exactly in the orientations of where they are relative to the CAD map of the room behind that. And so this really gives you a clear mapping of where those projectors are relative to the room. Now, as an aside, within the first year or two after I came there, we absolutely stopped using the terms left or right to describe anything. We've absolutely gone to ordinal directions to describe things because, again, less confusion, right? More precise. Yes, there are people who are directionally challenged, may not walk in a room and know what directions east, west, north, south. So that's why this mapping can help. But yeah, we have absolutely east, west was or left, right was horrible. Left, right from whose perspective, right? I mean, it just led to all kinds of confusion, and it wasn't even consistent, right? I was like, ugh. All right, so here's another example. This is actually a child development laboratory. So this is where basically early childhood educators, they actually have a preschool they run, and so this is a room where they interact with kids, right? So this is the map of the room. So these are actually seating microphones. They want to record interactions, but they may not want to pick up all the audio in the room. For example, there's like a little work table here in that room, where the teacher can sit, and there's some chairs around it. This is, of course, the entrance. This is where they interact with the students as they're coming in or leaving for the day. And so this is giving them an opportunity to choose which mics are muted or unmuted for the recording. And again, not saying that all this is great, but at least the mapping is very clear. Like, what mic am I turning on or turning off? You can immediately tell from the map where in the room that mic is being picked up. Here's another great example of mapping. This is in an Allen and Heath mixing board in the effects processing parts of it, where they have this, echo unit. Well, this is an actual physical echo, this tape echo unit, and then this is the virtual version of that tape echo unit. And I just love how this is like literally physically mapped very similarly to what you would see on the actual physical device. Okay, so if you're a long time audio geek audio recording guy who's used to using those, you can immediately pull this up. You're very comfortable. Hey, that looks familiar. I've seen that before. Okay, I know how to use that. So that's a form of mapping. Right. Well, yeah, there's that, right? Yep. Nope, that's true too. All right, so the last thing, and we're going to talk about, and we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A here, is standardization. Okay, standardization can absolutely help, right? As consistency, it comes back to that long-term memory. Hey, I've seen this before. I know what that looks like. I had some slides that talked about top-down, bottom-up processing, and I got rid of them because I only had 45 minutes to give this talk. But it, there's an improvement in what's called top-down processing. We can talk about that some other day. So the stages of evaluation and execution are much, much easier with user familiarity, and so could not encourage you more to absolutely standardize everything you're doing across your campus to the extent possible. Create standards. So this is just a little hunk of our control systems standards document. And we go through this in absolute detail. Okay, so functions, power. So power on. What does power on do? Well, it turns on the displays. Okay, and this applies to primary presentation and confidence monitors. Depending on the use case, may not power all monitors like in a team-based learning room. The other thing it does is it lowers the screen if it's optical. The other thing it does is it sets the system to a known good state. So when we recognize a power on button push, our control systems set the source to the last source selected. It unmutes the microphone and program audio. It sets the program audio and microphone audio to a known good level. It selects the instructor-facing camera. It sets that camera preset to be pointing at the teaching station. And this all happens automatically with the on button push. We're basically putting this room into a known good state instantly. But again, this is, and this document goes on and on to talk about all the different functions and things and what's supposed to happen. It goes on to, what visual feedback are you going to get, or what auditory feedback are you going to get from each of these. And so, this is helping enforce this type of standardization that as a instructor or a student walks from room to room, they can walk in any room. Hey, that looks familiar. I know how that touch panel works. We're going to be okay with that. So that was that. So happy to answer any questions if anyone has. Yes. Yep. We have not yet, taken advantage of the immersive, and we've looked at it. We've kind of played with it a little bit, but again, it to make that work, you're now adding a different user interface, right? You're not going to do that with a traditional, for us, Extron touch panel. Now you're going to have an iPad or some other device that's going to run that for the immersive active learning solution. And so at this point, we've just decided, again, back to consistency and standardization, that we're not going to add another user interface device into a room that's non-standard for everything else we're doing. So that's the direction we've chosen on that. But yep. Okay, great. I'd love to have that conversation then. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah.
You said you are thinking, you did say that your control systems aren't perfect, and you're thinking about blowing ours up. Are you thinking about blowing yours up? And if you were, what types of things in today's world would you introduce into the control interface?
Wow, that's a great question. The quick answer is no. At this point, I'm not intending to blow our control system layout up. And the changes that I'm thinking are really subtle, right? It's more, we've got some older systems where you're not getting multimodal, right? You're not getting a beep associated with it. There's some, some textual changes with regards to, terminologies. Then I think we could simplify some of that in some cases. And honestly, I haven't yet really taken that touch panel and done a real ADA compliance. So if I were going to do one thing, that'd be the next big thing that we need to do is really, take that touch panel design and really look at it from an ADA compliance perspective and, see how good it is. And I'm confident we're going to find some big issues that we're going to have to address from that perspective too.
Yeah, that is something we got away from the red green. But our control systems personally have way too much functionality. My predecessor thought differently of how I did, and engineer, and we have every piece of functionality possible in our control system. And I've said for years, this just confuses users.
Right.
So that's why we're thinking about the whole.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that our team is, and we can't always get away with it as the room gets more advanced, but to the extent possible, we do not want pop-up pages. You only like one page ever, and everything that you need to do is on that single page, as simple as possible. Now, the one thing, the areas where we have to have pop-up pages right now are camera controls. We don't want to make the touch panel big enough to to do the pan, tilt, zoom controls. So we have a pop-up page for camera controls, but that's really about it. That's the only primary pop. We have a pop-up page for help, I guess. We have a help page that pulls up. Correct. Microphones for us are a single slider. We've got an audio guy who's really good at tweaking the levels inside the DSP, such that a lapel mic right here and a handheld mic right here give you about the exact same volume, right? So he's really good at that. So that helps us out. But yeah, so no. It's a single slider controls all the mics equally. We're gonna be putting some catch boxes in this summer, so that's gonna be new. So we're gonna have to figure out how that works out with regards to that making that volume mix work just right. But yeah.
I was just wondering what your take on drag and drop
I guess, from my perspective, you're going to really have to make sure that the signifiers are really good, that this is how that works. And I don't think that anyone does that very well. And so, yeah, I would be strongly against that myself, a type of drag and drop interface like that. Yeah.
I have some experience with those, and they're no good. What the reason they're no good is you drag and drop on this. And if you don't drag and drop on this, don't make your touch panel do something the phone doesn't do. Because this is where people know their interfaces from.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that goes back to, long-term memory, top-down processing, which you didn't talk about. But yeah, so everyone's very familiar with this, right? And so to the extent that we can replicate this, because this is really deeply entrenched in your long-term memory on how this works, the better it can be for everyone.
Well, if you drag and drop it, uninstall the media system.
Right, exactly. Right. All right. Well, we are at time. I'll stick around for a little bit longer. I do appreciate all your attention and the great questions. And feel free, reach out, connect with me, and happy to have more conversations. Thanks, everyone.